Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Dog Nation Postgame Show, presented by the UGA Bookstore, back at the UGA Bookstore. And I got to tell you, not only did it feel great to be between the hedges today with 93,000 folks at Sanford Stadium, it feels great to be back in the UGA Bookstore tonight because all those folks that have been watching Georgia football all day long are strolling in here to the UGA Bookstore. Now they're doing their shopping. They're getting ready for the rest of the season. It's just so much fun to watch the atmosphere in Athens when the game is done. And UGA Bookstore filled up with that right now. And by the way, if you are leaving Sanford Stadium, I'd love to have you come by and see us. We're actually on the second floor of the UGA Bookstore. That's been our home away from home when we're in Athens, going a number of years. And so come on by and see us, walk up. If I'm doing the show, I'll wave at you. I do that all the time. We're casual around here. But I'd love to see you. I'd love to say hello to you. And there's some really cool stuff that we're going to be showing you throughout the night there as well going on here. Some stuff in terms of big autograph signings coming up. Obviously, some great apparel that's here at the UGA Bookstore right now. So a lot of that coming up. We'll talk about all of that. But I know the main thing you want to talk about is what happened on the field today, 56-7. Georgia a winner over UAB. And obviously the day started with trying to keep up with all the quarterback. It's not controversy, but quarterback drama is probably a better word with this. With JT Daniels, the rumor in the middle of the week that he was dealing with an injury that turns out to be true. As I told you on Dog Nation Daily this week, these things have a way of turning out to be true usually. If you think a player is hurt, he probably is. Daniels no different here in this case. And then the confusion of who was going to start between Carson Beck and Stetson Bennett. We saw both quarterbacks play today. Some fans obviously wanted to see Beck start because to a lot of Georgia fans, he's the shiny new thing they haven't seen yet. He's the former four-star, former highly touted player coming out of the state of Florida. So there was some energy and excitement around the chance to see him play. And obviously, when he didn't start, some Georgia fans were curious about as to why. And then Stetson Bennett started, and lo and behold, he ties a team record in terms of a program record in terms of touchdowns thrown in a game with 5 today. And at one point in time, he was averaging 45 yards per attempt in the first half. It was as good a brand of football as Bennett or anybody really could have played. No quarterback in that spot today could have played better than what Bennett did in the first half when he was seemingly throwing a touchdown every time he dropped back to pass. It's pretty amazing to see. I got a tweet today, and I apologize not to give credit to the tweeter because I don't remember who exactly it was, but it was such an appropriate thing. Well, I promise we'll get all your comments coming up after this. But this was such an appropriate thing in that today was a fun day. And we talked about this a lot during the offseason on Dog Nation Daily, that a lot of ways in which you would measure a team through stats and complicated means, sometimes the simplest way is actually the best. Did you have fun? Were the games fun? For me, last Saturday and Clemson and Charlotte against Clemson, that was fun. You saw me singing Garth Brooks at the end of the game. That's how much of a good time I was having. You beat a top 5 team, that's the way it goes. When you come out here today, home opener, a little bit of confusion about who's going to start at quarterback. Georgia not even, full complement of its offensive talent either. There's still a few guys working their way back from injuries. But when you coast to a 56-7 win, even if it's a UAB team that's not a Power 5 team, not an SEC-type team, but when you coast to a win like that, inside the stadium, I can tell you this, everybody was having a blast. The cheers were going up. The weather was beautiful. It was just really fun all the way around, and I had a great time seeing all that today. So we're going to take your comments. We're going to talk about a lot of this kind of stuff here at the UGA Bookstore here today. And, of course, we appreciate the UGA Bookstore making the show possible for you today there as well. So what do you say we do this? Let's start on Facebook. We'll roll through YouTube. We'll pull some out on the Dog Nation homepage there as well. And we'll just go through kind of everything that Dog fans kind of have on their mind right now as Georgia goes out and gets a win today against UAB, a team that I can tell you that this Georgia coaching staff had a lot of respect for. And when we talk about the why and the what and the how of the Georgia quarterback situation today, that's the one thing you're going to hear me say a lot. And it's not my job to toe the company line for UGA. It's not my job to carry Kirby Smart's water necessarily. In this particular case, I just happen to think it's the truth that Georgia knew was facing a good defense in UAB. Last year, the Blazers were 6th nationally in yards per play allowed. In 2019, the last full season for college football, UAB amassed 44 sacks. So this is a defense and a defensive-minded head coach in Bill Clark that Kirby Smart's not just giving coach speak when he said he had a lot of respect for. And so he wanted to treat this game plan as a game plan for an opponent in which he had respect. You can honestly say, and I don't think it's hyperbole to do so, that UAB is probably better than at least 3 of the SEC teams right now, and a handful of those teams are also on Georgia's schedule. So this was a game in which, Georgia did not want to play around, and turning the thing over to Stetson Bennett here today to start. He was certainly not playing around. He was toying with the opposition, maybe, but not playing around. And Georgia coasted to a very easy victory. Last thing from me, and then we'll jump into your comments. That was very telling. When Kirby Smart spoke briefly to DJ Shockley, the sideline broadcaster, and by the way, DJ's doing a great job in his early days there as sideline broadcast on those radio network games. He said, what's the plan at quarterback? And, Kirby obviously mentioned Stetson Bennett, and then said, I'm paraphrasing, I don't have the exact quote in front of me, that the plan was to remain explosive on offense, still seek out those explosive plays. And if you're a Georgia fan, you want to look for the silverest of all linings in a day in which your starting quarterback was injured and unable to go. The fact that Georgia's offensive game plan didn't have to change and the pursuit of explosive plays didn't stop today simply because you're returning to a backup. Now, a lot of folks are going to parse the numbers and Bennett played this much, how much did Beck play, what does that mean for the future? I got to tell you, and once again, this is not Coach Big, this is just my honest opinion. I'm not that worried about the future right now. I'm worried about the present. I'm worried about what Georgia can do in its pursuit of a championship right now. And quarterback races of the future and anything that's going to happen beyond that, frankly, is not as interesting to me as it is seemingly to some of you. But we'll give you plenty of time to reflect your opinion. That's why we do a show like this. It's not just me blabbing the whole time. It's you getting a chance to share your opinion there as well. If you're looking for Terrence Edwards tonight, Terrence is going to be with us here. We're going to try to figure out a way to do this. The honest truth is the way we conducted our post-game show last year, we're just kind of back to a little bit different kind of video configuration right now, which makes it harder for us to bring Terrence in from a different location. We're going to try to get Terrence in Athens here at some point in time. We're also going to try to connect with him on video in some of our shows ahead. So stay with us on that as we try to figure all of that out. But for now, your comments, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, the homepage, everything else. Let me also say this. Try to see if I can show this off. I'll put my microphone down for a second. See this good-looking Georgia shirt, white Nike shirt like the coaches wear with the Georgia G right here? This is actually from the UGA bookstore. I'm dressed out to right now in apparel like you get here at the UGA bookstore. So this is a great-looking piece. Feels good on the golf course or whatever you're doing. It's the kind of apparel. We're up on the second floor, UGA bookstore down on the first floor. It's the kind of apparel they have from all the famous makers. Nike, Vineyard Vines, Peter Millar. I love the Peter Millar stuff, of course. 47 brand, Tommy Bahama. A lot of those apparel makers that you already love, they're actually making some great-looking stuff for UGA, including the Nike stuff like the coaches wear. So if you stop by and see the UGA bookstore, you can see that for yourself. And I'm not going to show it to you now because I want to get into the comments here. But if you're still in Athens, you want to stop by and see this great-looking T-shirt that they're giving away. Not giving away. They're selling these here right now. So come on by, find out more about that. We're here at the UGA bookstore taking your comments. And the game day shirt for today is spectacular. I'll show that to you here in a moment. First, that's some of your comments, though. Bryce Dixon says the mail is guaranteed on Saturday. And, yeah, you talk about in the name, image, likeness era, what could be more appropriate right now than Mailman Stetson Bennett for that nickname? It's a lot of fun. I mean, nobody's going to question JT Daniels is the starting quarterback for this team, but no one's going to deny that having a backup quarterback capable of playing the way that Bennett played is potentially a nice thing to have. And if nothing else, even if it's just a one-game story, which quite possibly that's all this is, even if it's just a one-game story, to be able to see the mailman doing what he did today and be able to have all the mailman paraphernalia that folks are showing on social media, I got to say that's a pretty fun thing all the way around. Good to see Pam Adams checking in with a How About Them Dogs. That is my mom, so she's stopping by to see us here today for a moment. Nick Roundtree says all these dog fans steady throwing Stetson under the bus are lining up to invite him to a Christmas dinner now. And you know how that's going to go, and I'm not going to even make that big of a deal about all of that too much, right? You know, it's like the same people, some of the same people anyway, they didn't want to start him before the game, are upset that they're upset that they did, are now going to want to, carry him around campus now that he played the game that he did. And look, I get the interest and the intrigue with the future of the quarterback situation looks like for Georgia. I totally understand all of that. I understand why fans want to see more of Carson back than they did. The one sentiment I'm going to disagree with, and we're going to hear this some in the comments section, I saw this some on Twitter, was the idea that somehow Georgia has disrespected Beck by not giving him the start today. Listen, I think there's a chance that Carson Beck will eventually be a very good quarterback for Georgia. But today was the second game of his second year on campus. I cannot listen to the idea that Beck was disrespected by not getting the start. He played plenty, got a chance to see what he could do between the lights, or between the lines, under the lights, or almost under the lights. It was It was a daytime game. You get the point that I'm making. You got a chance to see him some in game action. He was able to get some of that experience. But as far as, this notion that it was a disrespectful thing not to start him for a guy that is this early in his college career, there are a lot of players who have waited a long time, longer than Stetson Bennett, to see the field, many of them very good quarterbacks. So this notion that somehow it's time to be impatient because Beck didn't step in an emergency situation and start for JT Daniels, with Daniels dealing with RG3, the color analyst on today's games on the Feinbaum Show yesterday, truly is an oblique injury. That to me is taking it too far. I just can't go there with that. Matt Rukavina says the fact is Stetson knows the offense and is cool under pressure. The mailman delivers. And, yeah, Matt, I think you're right about that. And, the one thing that I mentioned before, I have it on pretty good authority. And I know this kind of stuff sounds like coach speak, and I understand why it feels that way. But I have it on pretty good authority. This Georgia coaching staff did not want to mess around with UAB today. That second game of the season, good defense, program that's been to a bowl 4 years in a row, won Conference USA last year, might be able to do that again. They didn't want to screw around in this game. They wanted to make sure that they had the best offense they could put on the field, which for them today was Bennett. That's not an indictment of Beck. It's simply an acknowledgement of the fact that Beck is still relatively new into his college career. And I think some fans seemingly had it in their mind that this was an exhibition, that this was anything can happen and you might as well just play whoever you want to because UAB is powerless to do anything to stop you. The final score would suggest that's true, but I can promise you that was not the nature of Georgia's preparations going into the game. Let me also say this. I'm going to get some more YouTube comments. Let me show you this. I'm going to try to see if I can get a little closer so you can see this. I'm going to put the microphone down to do so. Y'all watch this T-shirt for a second. So what this T-shirt is, it's a really cool thing. It says full capacity at Georgia, 9/11/21 versus UAB. And on the back, it looks fantastic with the beautiful, beautiful image of the full stadium at Sanford Stadium. The text there, I'm sure it's hard to see as I showed it to you a moment ago, but it says it's hard to beat a full house. These are the game day shirts for today. So for any of you who were here today, I talked to some folks a little earlier who were kind of here for the very first time. This was their first game or first time in a long time. If you want a great way to celebrate what was a terrific day here at Sanford Stadium, this game day T-shirt, there are a few of these left, acknowledging the return to a full stadium here at Sanford Stadium. What a fun thing this is. And if you're, doing some last-minute late tailgating, or if you're just now leaving the stadium, or you're kind of congregating around the bridge, come on over and see us. The game day T-shirts are still here. I'm still here. I'd love to wave at you. I probably can't speak to you right now because I'm doing the show, but I'll give you a thumbs up or a wave or whatever else. But the most important thing is get some of these game day T-shirts. There are only a few of these left. I wanted to show this on the air today simply because I thought it was a lot of fun, because I loved being there with 93,000 of my closest friends today. And here at the UGA bookstore, you get a chance to do that too. And, of course, I'm feeling good in the Nike coaches gear here today there as well. Thomas Van Santa saying no score right now from Fayetteville with Texas and Arkansas. Y'all keep me coming on those scores. And don't be giving me bogus scores because right now I'm kind of a one-man band. I can't verify. Y'all don't do that. Mike Taylor says nobody is playing on Bennett, tired of Kirby playing games. But, Mike, here's where I'm going to push back on you. Why is it playing games? I really don't understand that. Now, if you want to say, well, we've been told that Beck is doing well at practice. We've been told that Beck is developing well. I don't have any reason to disbelieve that, but I'm also not going to take what some whisper campaign says on the basis of a practice that very few people saw as the gospel truth on that. I have no idea how well Beck is developing. He's clearly ahead of where he was a year ago. Smart has been complimentary of that. But the idea that it was playing games to start Bennett over Beck, I simply don't think that's true. Here's the thing, and I just said this on our Kroger kickoff before the show began. The real story today is not whether Beck was going to start or Bennett was going to start or anything like that. The real story is your starting quarterback is injured. Now, there's a lot of people who have reason to believe he's not very seriously injured because he was going through some warm-ups here today. But it's still an oblique issue, which obviously hinders your ability to throw the football. So Georgia has to think about this in terms of not just who is the best quarterback to beat UAB today, but who's the best quarterback to play in SEC games coming up the next few weeks. And to me, the notion of, to use your phrase, playing games, goofing around, would have been something less than that right now. I understand the intensity around folks who want to see Carson back, and I don't think anything about the way this played out today makes it any less likely that one day Carson Beck is a capable starter for Georgia. But the notion that second week of his second year, I think there are some Georgia fans who I think simply are expecting too much from him too soon. I really do. And I don't think it's tantamount to game playing that Smart started Bennett over Beck. Now, if you want to say that, kind of touted Beck as the number 2 quarterback, listen, things change, right? I mean, it's one thing to be the number 2 quarterback as far as getting reps in practice, and the number 2 quarterbacks, the actual quarterback that you want to trust to go out there against what was a year ago, respective of competition, one of the nation's top defenses. I just think that's an entirely different thing. And some of you, I think, have been pretty quick to assume the guy you haven't seen is better than the guy that you have seen. But I think that's also kind of a false premise there as well. I'm not mad at you for making the comment. I'm just saying that I think that it misunderstands the actual situation. Green Soldier on YouTube says, you told me and I didn't want to listen, but, man, I sure am glad I was wrong. Mailman put express priority mail on that thing today. He really did. And, here's the thing I like and wish could be true. I wish people could just have fun and enjoy that. It's likely a one-week story. Next week, maybe JT Daniels is healthy enough to play again, and if Bennett were to start, obviously he didn't play as well as he played today in every game he started a season ago, so him repeating that performance may be somewhat unlikely. But today it happened. The weather was beautiful. Those who got a chance to tune in on TV or found it streaming on the internet in the early going of the game, I know some folks were having a hard time finding the game to watch it on their screens because of some issues there at the beginning. But I can promise you, for the people that were not injecting social media into their veins, for the people who were here at the stadium, the ones that I talked to, were having a great time. This was a lot of fun today for a lot of people. And it's not a season-long story in all likelihood, but it was pretty good for today. Let me get a few more YouTube comments here. We'll talk some more. Georgia Boy 1988 says, I understand getting your future reps, but I think that Brock Vandegrift's the future quarterback, not Beck. That's my opinion. One has to, he also mentions with Gunnar Stockton. Here's what I think. I think the 2022 quarterback competition is going to be fascinating. And to a degree, I am somewhat curious to see what kind of hints we get about that this season. But today, and this is the one thing that, and I've been on the other side of fans on this for the last 2 days, today was not about seeing what you have at quarterback for 2022. It's just not. And that's not me, carrying Kirby Smart's water, but the idea that this was a extra G day where you could put the future on display, as fascinated as I am about the 2022 quarterback situation, because it is just genuinely interesting, that's not what Georgia's trying to do today. Georgia's trying to come out and beat this opponent, and they wanted to look good doing so. Smart, before the game, said, we are looking for explosive plays. He said that on the radio. Frankly, for a Georgia offense that I'm not quite so sure in recent years how many Saturdays it actually started the day saying it was looking for explosive plays, the fact that it was trying to find them today, I think is pretty exciting. And if you were disappointed it wasn't Beck who got the chance at the very beginning, can you at least be excited about this? The fact that the receiving end of that first Beck, names are hard sometimes. The receiving end of that first Stetson Bennett touchdown was Jermaine Burton. We saw him get the big play we wanted him to see. You see, Brock Bowers get involved with a couple of those touchdowns there as well. So the cool thing about Bennett, his ability to know the offense, distribute the football, be kind of cool in the face of a defense that I'm sure was throwing some stuff at him, his ability to withstand all of that gave you a chance to test drive a few of these weapons that you really want to use. Whether you think about October 2nd against a game Arkansas team or on the road October 9th at Auburn, you're going to want to have some playmakers that are capable for the stretch run of SEC play. You were able to get some of those guys ready to go today because of how effectively Stetson Bennett was throwing the football. This was not empty calories that Georgia was scarfing on today. This was valuable game experience for a guy in Jermaine Burton who's still pretty young, for Brock Bowers and a lot of other guys who touched the football a lot today. There was some stuff that happened. And, I guess honesty somewhat compels me to admit, based on the totality of the game, can anybody say that Kirby Smart made the wrong decision about who he started? I mean, we didn't see an insignificant amount of Beck today. I mean, is there anyone that can't say clearly between the two right now who looked to be the better among the two? That's not a shot at Carson Beck. That's an observation of what I think was in front of our eyes for the last 60 minutes. Lee Godown says, don't forget the bad play calling. I didn't know that I saw bad play calling from Georgia today. Lee, you may have to give me a little bit more information on that. Steve Self says if JT were to go down for the year, do you want Stetson starting? You know what he did last year. Today is the day to prepare for the future, which could be next Saturday, any week. But here's the thing, though, Steve. let's just be real about this. If JT Daniels goes down for the year, it's a problem no matter what. This idea that you have an automatic remedy for your Heisman candidate quarterback if he were to have a season-long injury, that's not waiting in the wings for virtually any program right now. So is the conversation different if we're talking about starting at quarterback for a series of games as opposed to what we hope as Georgia fans, just one game for Daniels? Quite possibly it is. But this notion that you're going to take one of these younger quarterbacks, back or anybody else, and develop them to a JT Daniels level in the event Daniels were to suffer a season-long injury, that's probably not going to happen. If JT Daniels suffers a season-ending injury, Georgia's probably out of the national championship business. And, yeah, maybe you'll get to see all the Carson Beck that you want. But sometimes the prospect of the future, when you see them in an extended role too early in their career, sometimes that extended role has a tendency to sort of show up some things that maybe you didn't imagine you'd see when that guy hadn't played very much. And you don't have to go very, very far into Georgia's past to see some examples of that. So, yes, if Daniels were to suffer a season-ending injury, the quarterback conversation gets pretty unpleasant pretty quick. As well as Stetson Bennett played today, I don't think anyone's going to suggest, and he's going to go out there and do that against Alabama. It would be very bad if JT Daniels suffered a season-ending injury. But nothing about what happened today is bad, and we said this going into the game. Jeremy Harbin says, we win by 49, defense pitches a shutout, and y'all are complaining and whining. Jeremy, listen, I knew it wasn't going to be that fun of a show. Some of y'all heard me on Tuesday or Wednesday actually predict this post-game show would not be very fun. So I'm glad you're watching, and listen, I'm happy to have the conversation. But I predicted this week this was not going to be a fun post-game show, and it's actually fun for a different reason than I first thought it would be. But my broad prediction that this was going to be a little bit of a tough one, that's playing out thus far. I'm going to do more Facebook, more YouTube. Let me also see if I can hit up the homepage here for a second there as well. This will be kind of working on the fly here, but let's see if we can pull that up, and let's see if we can do that right now. Is that going to work? Are we going to do this? Let's see if we can get some of these comments going. Boy, that's a tricky one right now. So, our homepage viewers on the mobile device, I'm not seeing how to pull up those comments right now, but I appreciate you watching over there. I'm going to take some more comments over here on Facebook for a moment, and then we'll see if we can figure out the Dog Nation homepage maybe here in a little bit. Tim Bowman said Beck is gone. Listen, I understand the realities of the transfer portal, but I didn't see anything today that would make me think, well, that's it. Georgia's wasted Carson Beck, and therefore he's entered the transfer portal. The odds are between Beck and Vandegrift and Gunnar Stockton and, all the guys that Georgia's about to have, the odds of keeping all of them for 4 to 5 years or 3 to 4 years, the odds of doing that aren't great. But so you have to acknowledge the reality of the transfer portal. But this idea that you have to coach in fear of the transfer portal, that's not what you want Kirby Smart doing. You don't want him coaching in fear of the transfer portal. You just don't want it. All you can control is who you bring into the program. And all you can control on game day is putting the best 11 that are out there. Now, listen, if you want to go back and dig up the archives of podcasts and video shows and things like that, could you find examples of me criticizing certain quarterbacking decisions from Georgia? Honestly, you probably could. I can think of a few of those in which I haven't loved the quarterback spot. But to me, this ain't that, y'all. This is not that. This is not – I'm not even going to start mentioning names here. But this is not some of the quarterback stuff of the past. This was starting quarterback, dealing with an oblique strain or oblique whatever. I don't know what strain. That's language. I don't even know the correct medical terminology. And therefore going back to a guy who started and won SEC games a year ago. This notion that only the stubborn Kirby Smart would have made this choice today, that is not fair to Smart. And listen, y'all can say whatever you want to about him. He makes gazillion dollars a year. Criticize him for what you want. There are times in which criticizing Smart's probably a fair thing to do. I just can't go with you on this one today. I'm happy. I'm in a good mood. I thought Georgia played well. It's kind of a one-off, right? It's kind of a break from the norm. We'll see what happens with all this beyond that. But here's what I'm concerned about. And I'm going to be a little bit of a repeater on this during the show. My concern is how healthy Daniels is, not who plays if he's not. you need to find out if JT is healthy and when he's going to be fully healthy again. And if you want to get frustrated with Smart for playing games with the injuries, now we're talking. The idea of everything is fine, now it's not. If you want to get frustrated with the secrecy around some of the injuries, I'm right there with you on that. That annoys me sometimes too. But the quarterback story is, when is Daniels going to be healthy, not who plays when he didn't. I'd say enjoy the ride on all this here for a moment. We'll get more of your comments coming up. Let me also say this. Michael showed me some comments there on the Dog Nation homepage. I appreciate that. So Barry weighing in saying, not disappointed, it was not back. Just don't think it's wise to name a guy number 2 and then make the statement you don't trust him to play. I get that, but I just think there's a big difference between starting a game and being number 2 in some sort of figurative sense when it comes to, practice reps. And I also don't think it's too much to tell a very young player. Remember, Carson Beck has not only been here for 1 year plus 2 games. His first year on campus was also the pandemic of 2020. He didn't have a spring practice back then. I don't think it's some sort of unforgivable thing to tell Beck, no, we're going to wait to give you a chance to be your first start there at Georgia. Because Smart, and this goes without saying, this is such an elementary point, it's almost not even worth saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. Smart and Munkin and Buster Faulkner and anybody else who weighs in on these decisions, y'all, they are watching these guys every single day. And one of the biggest fallacies that I think happens with fans is the assumption that the guy that you haven't seen is better than the guy you have seen. And I can think of a number of position groups where that goes on, where the guy that we have seen is, kind of a, level player here, and the guy we haven't seen, there's this huge assumption, well, this guy must be better than the other guy, when logic would dictate the guy that Kirby and the staff are choosing to play must be the better player. As of now, I'll just say this out loud. As of now, I think Stetson Bennett's the better player than Carson Beck. And if you're going to convince me that Kirby today should have played what is for now, in my mind, based on the assumption, not because I've been at every practice, I'm just trying to read the tea leaves. If you're going to try to convince me that Smart should have played a lesser player to start at quarterback right now, lesser mostly maybe because of experience, you're going to have to really work hard to convince me why that's true. You're going to have to really work hard to convince me why that's true. If you want some more stats here for a moment, 3 catches for Brock Bowers, 107 yards, also had 2 touchdowns. Mentioned Jermaine Burton, the 1 long touchdown there. Arian Smith, I know there's a little bit of injury concern with Smith there. Hopefully we'll get an update from that on Kirby Smart here coming up. Not a lot on the ground today for Georgia. 7 carries, 34 yards for Zamir White. Dejon Edwards ended up matching him with 7 carries there as well. Kendall got 8 carries today. So just 8 carries, 26 yards for Milton. So this is a ground attack right now that's spreading it around here, and we're not really seeing any Georgia running back really break out in a big way as of yet. Back over to YouTube, more comments there. By the way, it's our Dog Nation postgame show. We're live from the UGA bookstore up here at the second floor. We're going to be here for every home game this year. I hope you'll come by and see us too. I hope you'll pick up yourself some great UGA apparel there too. Look at this really cool Nike coach shirt. I wish you could feel the material here. A great kind of moisture wicking. It's kind of stuff that like the coaches wear. Very comfortable. Looks good on the golf course. Looks good, tailgating, whatever you're doing. Really, really good stuff. It's the kind of thing. Nike, 47 brand, Peter Millar, Vineyard Vines, Southern Tide, all the great apparel makers, good-looking UGA gear. It's right down there on the first floor. And if you're still in Athens, want to get over here, or maybe you're here this week, still some time to celebrate the day that was, the return of 93,000 to Sanford Stadium. Great-looking game day T-shirt celebrates that. You may not be able to see this, but it says, it's hard to beat a full house. Beautiful picture of a full Sanford Stadium, acknowledging the UGA UAB game here. This is what the bookstore does, kind of a game day T-shirt every week. This is one of the coolest ones I've seen, though, in a while. So good stuff from the UGA bookstore. And, of course, if you can't be here to shop in person, you can shop online anytime, UGAbookstore.com. I also want to tell you this, and I haven't mentioned this yet, but coming up this Thursday from 4 to 6 p.m., and we'll show you this on the screen, this Thursday from 4 to 6 p.m., the terrific former Georgia coach Mark Richt, who's written a new book telling stories of his life, his time in football, and really sharing some of the important messages that he shared with us now going back a number of years. Coach Rick going to be here signing his new book. That's this Thursday from 4 to 6 p.m. at the UGA bookstore. In fact, he'll probably be sitting at the same table that I'm sitting at right now, so that'll be fun stuff with Coach Rick coming up on Thursday. Let's get more of your comments now here on the YouTube page for a moment. Kevin Grammer wondering if Ole Miss is the second best team in the West. They were certainly impressive in week one against Louisville, and obviously right now the game I have on in front of me is Mississippi State looking at a 7-0 lead on NC State right now. Let's see what else. We got some comments coming in from Kirby Smart, too, from the post-game press conference. I'll share those with you here in a little bit. A lot of folks kind of weighing in. Lee Godown says Carson's first series was 3 called runs. Yeah, I mean, it's a young quarterback playing his first game. Got a chance to get his first touchdown here today. This is how you commonly treat young quarterbacks. It's not Smart making less of the situation than it is. I think it's, with all due respect, Lee, some people are kind of making more of the situation than it is. That today was a day in which Georgia chose to go with an experienced quarterback to try to earn an easy win against a defense that Smart had respect for. That doesn't mean that 2 years from now Carson Beck's not lighting it up the way Mac Jones did from Alabama. But when you think about Jones last year for Alabama, that's a class of 2017 signee. He didn't have to wait 5 seconds to become the starting quarterback of the New England Patriots, but he waited a number of years to become starting quarterback at Alabama. That's just the way that college goes. NFL quarterbacks, as rookies, are often thrown right into the fire. Mac Jones is going to have that happen for him at New England. He didn't have a chance in the world of having that happen for him in Alabama. It's just a different kind of thing when it comes to college football. In college, they're going to either make you earn it, you're going to have to steep learning climb. There's just a big, big difference in going from even the great things that Beck was doing as a junior at the Florida high school level. There's a big step up in competition there. Most guys aren't ready to do it right away. They're just not. Let's watch some of the young quarterbacks and see if they have any growing pains this year. Alabama's obviously turning to a pretty young quarterback. That's a little bit different than we've kind of seen in college football the last couple of years. But young quarterbacks typically have growing pains. They typically have steep learning curves. I really don't think there's much about what Georgia did today that's all that unusual. There was a huge response to it. Trust me, I've been seeing it, and I've been following it. We've been talking to folks both pregame and now postgame about it. I understand the mood of the fans on this. I happen to think this is one in which the fan is just kind of getting it wrong. I have to say that. But we're going to keep giving you a chance to give your opinions on that. Good stuff coming in from Kirby Smart here. So with obviously Brock Bowers having a big day today, Smart says, this is the quote post-game press conference, we need more tight ends who are elite. Sounds like that's a direct message to Oscar Delp, the 4-star from West Forsyth. And, of course, you'll remember Shane Beamer used the podium at SEC Media Days to also send a little bit of a veiled message to Delp. You can't mention recruits by name, but that seems like a pretty direct message in the direction of Delp right there with Brock Bowers doing what he did. And, listen, I said this on Twitter today. I think we may be in Oscar Delp in the Oscar Delp era here. The Brock Bowers era here at Georgia. I love Darnell Washington, and I hope to see Eric Gilbert back playing again for UGA. But, y'all, Brock Bowers, he may be special. He may truly be special. Kirby Smart, here's the quote about why it was Stetson Bennett today. He says, we're really young offensively. A lot of receivers out. We thought it would give us a calming effect to have him in, his experience and his ability to play in games. And, y'all, I don't think you can discount that. Starting this game 0-0 with a bunch of skill position guys who are still playing some of their very first college football, Carson Beck starting his first game against, you can believe me or not, a defense that has been very good in the past, that is a very different game. In fact, I think most football people would tell you that Beck actually probably played better coming into a game later with a comfortable lead already established than he might have played had he started the thing 0-0. I don't think you can discount what Kirby Smart's saying there. And I'm not one of these people that tells you that everything that Smart says should be etched in stone as the truest thing that's ever been spoken. Trust me, there are plenty of times when I raise an eyebrow at some of the things that Smart might say. This ain't one of those times. You can't deny this game was made easier for Georgia today and could have potentially been much more difficult had you put a young quarterback out there with a bunch of other young skill position guys, young offensive linemen in some cases. And remember, you got a center who's virtually brand new right now. You got all kinds of receivers who are playing that are still trying to figure this out. They're in front of 93,000 in Athens for the first time in more than 2 years, or nearly 2 years. This was not a day that Georgia wanted to mess around, and they didn't, and they won 56-7. And anybody who thinks that Georgia didn't do its job today, I just don't know about that. I just don't know. Stetson Bennett says, I guess it always feels like I'm fighting for my supper, and I'm sure he probably does feel that way. And listen, it's the nature of big boy college football. Folks don't want to just beat UAB. They want to win a national championship. I'm not asking for anybody to apologize for feeling that way. And you want the best players that can possibly do that. But today, the only thing that Georgia could do was beat UAB. They throttled them, and I thought it was a pretty good day. He says, Stetson Bennett about the performance, he says, it seems like it was an Oklahoma stat line when they played North Texas or somebody. And I wouldn't discount that from Bennett here, because there have been a lot of instances in which Georgia has played a group of five, overmatched opponent. A lot of instances when that's occurred, and Georgia did not look pretty. I mean, how many times, y'all, have we sat through a game at Sanford Stadium against one of these teams, and you heard the person sitting next to you in the stadium and the person you're watching the game with on TV, Georgia playing down at the level of its opponent. Some of these games sometimes, I mean, let's just say it out loud, some of these games sometimes can be a little bit boring. I mean, give credit to this Georgia offense today. This wasn't boring at all. This was pedal to the metal, fastball football. And I thought it was pretty remarkable. Pretty remarkable. Stetson Bennett was also saying he was so nervous pregame he wasn't able to eat a pregame meal. So that's to give you an idea of kind of how he felt. As far as the update on JT Daniels, Kirby said that JT got better as the week went along. They did not know anything was wrong on Monday. So, yeah, there's that. And, look, that's the thing you can't lose sight of. That's the thing to be concerned about. Not, how things stand with other quarterbacks in the depth chart and what things look like for 2022 or anything along those lines. The thing you got to be concerned about is, when can you get JT Daniels back healthy? This was supposed to be his sixth start in a Georgia uniform. This is a guy that didn't play, I think, one game in 2019, 4 games in 2020. This guy went on, almost 2 years without playing very much football at all. So this was not part of some grand master plan to have him not playing today. This wasn't a throwaway game that Georgia didn't care about. You only get 12 of these. I can promise you Daniels wanted to play. In fact, that's what Mark Schlabach reported for ESPN, how much Daniels wanted to be out there. Georgia would have liked to have him out there too. The big moments that Bowers and, Burton and guys like that that could have been better used as chemistry with JT Daniels. I'm not going to deny that. So when I go to bed tonight, wake up tomorrow, you start thinking about the week ahead, that's where my mind's going to be. How healthy is Daniels, and can we please for once get some, clear language around one of these injuries that doesn't, backtrack? Because I don't know how many injuries in a row, it's not that big of a deal. 2 days later, come to find out it may be 5 weeks. You got to really hope that's not what's going on here with Daniels. I don't have any reason to believe that it is. But a lot of Georgia fans feel like they've been jerked around with some of this news as of late. I understand that. Linda Bass Miller brings up ESPN, saying, hope ESPN gets its act together. Next week, we don't have to keep switching around to watch the number 2 team. So here's what I read, and I don't know if they said this clearly on TV or not, but so apparently there is a contractual obligation with the U.S. Open tennis tournament. They had to start that right at 4 p.m. That's the agreement that ESPN has with the USTA. And so that's why the game was briefly streaming while both Tennessee and Pitt were both on the 2 ESPN channels. Because it's a little bit unusual for ESPN to have the same game on 2 frequencies, but they had to go to both those frequencies as a way of transitioning the college football fans over to the one side for its conclusion, because they have the contract with the tennis. Now, I realize that's frustrating. It's also the reason why years ago, if you remember CBS, back when they used to have the U.S. Open tennis tournament, that's why their SEC coverage didn't start until much later in September. They didn't want to start covering college football until tennis was over with. Florida, Tennessee, back in the 90s was always CBS's first game. Post-U.S. Open was the reason for that. So the reason why you had to go streaming for Georgia today for a while, and I know it's a little bit hard for some folks to find the stream, the reason why that happened was because of the tennis tournament, not the Tennessee-Pitt game. They were just moving that to kind of bring the conclusion. Now, I'll also say this, and then we'll get back to the comments. Today, some of you are aware that Notre Dame-Toledo was only available on a stream. There was controversy amongst Georgia fans back in April when the Georgia G-Day game was only available through streaming. Well, today was, I think this is the first instance that I can think of. Some of y'all have better memories than I have. Maybe you can cite an example of this, of a high-profile game. Notre Dame typically draws a pretty big TV audience. Even a team like Toledo would get a decent audience. And that game was only available through Peacock, which is the same thing that some of us watch the WWE on. But the point is, that's a different story for a different day. The point is, boy, I'd love to tell you that there's no more streaming in the future for you watching these football games, but I get the impression that's not the case. And I don't know. I watch a lot more streaming content than I used to now, Disney Plus and WWE and things like that. But my preference is still to watch these games on TV. I just think it's easier to switch back and forth in channels, things like that. But I would say as the rights agreements change, there's going to be more streaming in the future. Georgia fans were a little frustrated at the beginning of today's game. Notre Dame fans or college football fans who wanted to watch Notre Dame, that entire broadcast was only available on streaming, and not everybody has Peacock right there, one remote button away. Let's see what else. Clarence Dawson, he calls the running game today pedestrian. Clarence, I think that's worth paying attention to a little bit. And it's weird, right? It's like you can't nitpick too much because the passing game was so explosive. You know, maybe UAB was really selling out to stop the run. Maybe that's why the passing game was so explosive. Sometimes it's kind of hard to know what is. But this is not a great running game right now. It wasn't great against Clemson. It was good when it needed to be late in the game. Wasn't great today, even though the passing game was brilliant. It really wasn't great a year ago. That I think a lot of folks are ready to see a pecking order emerge among these running backs and kind of pare down the number of carries a little bit. But I think what you're kind of seeing right now, unfortunately, is no one from that group. And you had Zeus get what? Let me look at these stats again because I had a few of these. Michael Carville, our producer, gave them to us. So you had Zeus got 7, Edwards in kind of late duty got 7, Milton got 8, Cook got 5, McIntosh got 4. So you're spreading it around a little bit, and among that group, you're not really seeing anyone distinguish themselves. Now, I thought McIntosh's catch was beautiful, and he's a good athlete. And that's a guy that I know we love James Cook in that kind of slot receiver, scat back type role, but I think McIntosh brings a lot to the table there. But as far as the other backs, as of now, you're not really seeing one of these guys really step up and distinguish himself yet to the point where you say, well, that's the guy I want to give 20 carries to, or that's the guy I want to give 15 carries to. As of yet, you haven't really seen that occur. So I'm not going to make too big of a deal of it right now on a day that was otherwise splendid for the Georgia offense, but I noticed it was not a great day for Georgia running the football. Thomas Van Santa says, I missed Jermaine Burton's touchdown catch. Thomas, it's funny you say that because I saw Terrence Edwards on Twitter say he missed. I know Terrence was running around a bunch today. He's got kids that are playing youth sports and things like that, so I'm sure he may have been doing something like that. It was early in the game. I guess Terrence had stepped away from the screen there for a moment, and lo and behold, he comes back, find out his protege had caught what was nearly an 80-yard touchdown. I'm sure that was devastating. I'm sure he was disappointed that he didn't get a chance to see that live. D-Mart 42 on the left guard situation. Yeah, I mean, they're still, they're still working through some of the stuff with the offensive line right now. Brandon Howell wants to see more of Kenny McIntosh, maybe so. Foster Moss also mentioning, excuse me, let me try this again. Words are hard sometimes. Mentioning the missed field goal from Podlesny, and obviously that's on the heels of him missing a kick last week too, and field goal kicking is just somewhat erratic. I mean, last year, Podlesny was true when it really mattered in a bowl game win against Cincinnati. He really had a great year, prior to all of that. But from year over year, it's just kind of hard to know what you're going to get. I mean, if you try a field goal in a tough spot when it really matters, you're never really quite so sure what you're going to get. So in the case of Podlesny, that's a guy that I still feel pretty good trotting out there, but he's obviously missed a couple. And today's kick, certainly the kind you'd expect him to make. So I'm not quite sure what to make about that, but a little concerning that you've missed 2 kicks in consecutive games. I won't deny that. Green Soldier says we're all Arkansas fans tonight. You better believe that. I'd love nothing more than to see Texas lose. What is the score right now? Don't give me a fake score. I'll figure it out if you do. Texas Dog gives you Woo Pig Suey. Yeah, you better believe Texas Dog living there in the Lone Star State. I'm sure he does not like the Longhorns. Ooh, Jay Shipes, give me a little grief. Good to see you guys. Thanks for being here. Jay Shipes giving me a little bit of grief for A&M. They did, I guess, pull out the win today, but they did not cover the 17 on the road in Denver. So not a good day. In fairness to the Aggies, starting quarterback got hurt. They didn't have a Stetson Bennett to come fill in today. Foster Moss, Xavier Mitchell says, it's 10-0. Wait, 10-0 good guys? Ooh, Arkansas with a 10-0 lead on, is that right? Arkansas with a 10-0 lead? Good stuff there, if that's the case. Jeremy Harbin says that Podlesny's missed 2 already, missed 3 last year. Yeah, I mean, it's worth paying attention to, but as I said before, I think of like field goal kickers a little bit like relief pitchers in baseball, or, you know, one of these things from year to year. You just kind of don't really know what you're going to have. And, you know, I mean, there's a reason why the meme college kickers exist, because college kickers are likely to do just about anything at any given moment. Guatemala Mike with some criticism for the offensive line today. Let's see how this develops. Let's see how this plays out. We'll see how all that plays out. I would say that offensive line right now is still somewhat in flux. They're still trying to figure out what they want to do there. And, you know, you had the moment, you know, somewhat late in the game where you had both Broderick Jones and Amarius Mims playing. So from that standpoint, you know, the more those young tackles prove worthy of being inserted, the more it gives you a chance to move Jamari Salyer back to guard. And, I mean, watch the way these tackles are being treated. Mims and Jones are both elite prospects, but it's not going to be handed to you just because you were a big-time prospect and somehow they're scared of you entering the transfer portal. And this is what you want your program to be. You want your program to coach without fear of who may go in the transfer portal. You want guys to earn it, whether it be offensive tackles, whether it be, you know, what's happening at, you know, right guard, or, you know, what's happening at the quarterback spot with JT Daniels hurt. That's the way you want all this to play out. Javen Perry says Texas missed a field goal. Let's see what else. Jerry Popham was not happy with ESPN today. Will Reed says, so you're saying that Beck isn't quarterback 2, Bennett's really quarterback 2? Along with the injury reports from Kirby, it's obvious he doesn't care about telling the truth to his fans. To me, look, I get the injury thing. I get frustrated about that too. Now, if Kirby Smart was sitting right here, he's going to tell you, I'm not trying to let my opponent know anything. So, yes, programs are going to work very hard to keep their injury situation shrouded in secrecy because they don't want the bad guys to hear about all this kind of stuff, but it's the fans who get caught up in that, and fans are left to wonder. But I told you this week, if you want to have a decent idea of what's really going on, always assume that the player in question is hurt more than the coach and other players are letting on. I mean, how many times in a row has this happened of, oh, he's fine, looked great, come to find out actually he's a little bit more hurt than was initially reported? How many times does that have to happen over and over again before that just becomes your default position? Just assume when Kirby Smart says a guy is fine that it's not quite as pretty and rosy a picture as it's being presented. Doesn't mean he's injured now for the year, but the last how many injuries for Georgia have been somewhat downplayed. That's just kind of the way that goes. But as far as the semantics of Beck being number 2 or not, in my mind, number 2 behind a healthy JT Daniels and number 1 with Daniels not available, I just think those are two different things. I really do. And I also think, look, when it comes to starting quarterback, in the past, I think Kirby Smart has tried to make that sound more dynamic than it really is. The idea, we're just going to practice, we're going to play the guy who practices the best. Deep down, we know that's not the case. Deep down, we know that you can't be splitting up your number 1 reps too much during the week. We just know that's not the case. But with the level below the starting quarterback, I'm guessing there is probably some room for some dynamism there. There is probably some room for some trading back and forth within the pecking order. Or there's just the belief of, we know what Stetson Bennett can do. That's underwhelming to a lot of fans. I get that. I still don't think he's gotten enough credit for what he did against Auburn, Tennessee, games like that. Georgia would have lost at Arkansas last year if it wasn't for Stetson Bennett. That is I just think, verifiable fact. So, yes, he wasn't good enough to beat Alabama. Turned out, not to be, the guy there that day. But Georgia would have had at least one additional loss had Bennett not have been available to you last year. And, most of you were cheering the quarterback decision to start that game there as well, and look the way that turned out. I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm just trying to tell the truth here. So, when it came time to not choose a backup quarterback to play behind a healthy, fully capable starter, when it came time to choose a different starter in the absence of Daniels, it became a different decision. Regardless of the results, I think a lot of coaches would have made the choice that Smart made today, week 2, against a sneaky opponent that has a diabolical defensive mind as a head coach. Georgia was just not going to goof around here today. And it's not like, and I know we had a commenter mention before, when they finally brought Beck in, they made him hand off 3 times in a row. They gave Beck plenty of time to throw. I mean, it's not like you leave today wondering what Georgia has in Carson Beck. It's not like, that didn't go down. In fact, let me see. What do the Beck numbers end up being? I don't have the Beck numbers in front of me. Actually, maybe I do. Yeah, I do. He was 4 of 10 for 88 yards. So, he also threw a touchdown, did have a pick. Now, I have to be honest with you. I was leaving the stadium as the pick occurred. I was trying to get over here and get stuff for the postgame show. So I saw a tiny replay of the interception. I didn't really see much more of it than that. But 88 yards on 8 attempts is an 8.8, or I should say 88 yards on 10 attempts is an 8.8 yards per attempt number. That's not a bad, number on that. It's not a great completion percentage, but it's not a bad yards per attempt number. So those numbers aren't necessarily terrible for kind of your, debut game here. But it's certainly not an argument that he should have been playing instead of Stetson Bennett. I mean, you still want to play the more capable, game-ready quarterback. I don't have any reason to believe that's not Bennett in absence of Daniels today. It's not very exciting to some people, but it seems to have been the right call. Thomas Tyson on YouTube says, Beck will be fine, but I think Brock Vandagriff jumps him next year. Brock is a future Heisman finalist. He very well might. And look, even if Beck had played today and had played the way that Stetson Bennett played, I still would have been very open to the idea that Vandagriff still emerges as the starting quarterback next season. It seems like, the best that I can tell from some of the people I've talked to, things like that Carson Beck really grew quickly, accelerated growth at a certain point in time. That he finally just kind of, I shouldn't say finally, because I don't really know what the first few months for him were like on campus. But you can assume it was a steep learning curve. And then he got kind of crested over that, and it sounds like he really started putting it together pretty quickly there, to the point that Smart really praised him at SEC Media Days. He said some nice things about Stetson Bennett there. He said some nice things about Carson Beck at SEC Media Days. And I think Smart meant it, and I think I take it very seriously. Y'all, Carson Beck may one day be Georgia's Mac Jones. It's highly possible that he's the guy that steps in, after some of these quarterbacks are gone, and he leads Georgia national championship, or he may not have to wait that long. He may be the guy next season. But he's not behind schedule. He's just not. And I think this is one of those things where Georgia had a freshman quarterback in 2016 and another freshman quarterback in 2017. But that's not the position coaches want to be in. And yes, we've seen, some young quarterbacks lead their team to national championships. Lawrence did it for Clemson in 2018. Trevor Lawrence was the number 1 player in the country. That's not going to be, how you buy the weight loss product and the commercial at the bottom, like the small print at the bottom of the commercial says results not typical? What Trevor Lawrence did as a freshman in 2018, results not typical. That's just not the way it usually goes for 18-year-old guys. In fact, a year later, that's still not quite the way it typically goes. So I'm really just not that stressed out about Beck. I'm assuming he was happy to get a chance to play today. I'm sure it felt good to get his first touchdown. I love the fact that he delivered it to Justin Robinson, also his first career touchdown. I wouldn't be so quick to assume that Carson Beck's not happy today, that this wasn't pretty fun for him to get a chance to play a little bit. And I'm sure he wants to play more. You want him to be a competitor. Everyone, listen, every one of these guys wants to play more. I'm sure of that. But this notion that there's this, rapid impatience to rush off and go somewhere else, a lot of these Georgia guys and their families, they have better heads on their shoulder than sometimes they're given credit for. A lot of these guys know that hey, if you wait, maybe you're doing what Channing Tindall's doing right now, or what Latavius Briney's doing. Latavius Briney from the class of 2017, how many years did he wait to even get close to the field? And look what he's doing now. He's, breaking up passes, playing big, doing a lot of star stuff, making, folks, not – he's just doing a great job right now. And that's a guy that waited a long time to be on the football field. I can promise you, Carson Beck is not enduring the most interminable wait for his chance. There are a lot of guys who've waited a lot longer. And I'm not belittling it. I'm just saying it's not a crisis. Jay Shipe says Kentucky 14-0 now. I believe, is that 14-0 over Missouri? Darth Flyer says, do I think that JT Daniels plays next week? I don't know. I'm nervous about it. I mean, and I told y'all this on, if you watch Dog Nation Daily or listen to Dog Nation Daily, I told y'all that on the show at one point this week. The Georgia offense needs a healthy JT Daniels. They actually played better offensively today than I thought they would. But if you talk about like the big games coming up, if you want to be the best in those games, you're going to have your offensive nucleus playing together right now so you have a chance to do that. So I am definitely on pins and needles to find out. Not because I think South Carolina is some, scary opponent. They did win today, but, that's a team I expect Georgia to handle. But I want Daniels to get reps with this offense. Those guys who had the big games today, I want them catching those balls from Daniels because I think there's a dividend on that later on in the season. Let me do this real quick. Before we get more of your comments, it's our Marco's Pizza moment of the game. Let's do that and give a big shout out to Stetson Bennett. 5 touchdowns today. Those touchdowns will collectively add together to be our Marco's Pizza moment of the game. And, of course, a lot of you enjoying a lot of moments in front of your TV on the couch here this weekend. Pizza pairs great with that. Marco's Pizza goes best of all because it's great flavor. Think about the crispy golden crust, just baked so perfectly. Those 3 gooey cheeses melted on top. All those old-world toppings. I'd love to eat some right now, y'all. I got to tell you, I am starving right now. Marco's Pizza would be fantastic right now. And the great savings works out really well, too. You can get a large one-topping pizza right now for just $9.99. That's great savings. Find that out today. Our Marco's Pizza moment of the game. I'll also say this. Here back live at the UGA bookstore. Don't forget, the game day shirt is here right now. 93,000 people celebrating that. Good stuff here today. If you can't be here today to get that, stop by and get it this week here from the UGA bookstore. Of course, I'm wearing a good-looking shirt from Nike. Really fun stuff from the UGA bookstore. And speaking of the UGA bookstore, coming up this Thursday as well, from 4 to 6 p.m., Coach Mark Richt. He's got a brand-new book. Of course, we all have great memories of Coach Richt as Georgia coach from 2001 through 2015. And he's going to be here signing his book, telling stories. I know it's going to be great. So many folks looking forward to seeing Coach Richt. He's actually back in Athens now a lot more, which is, I think, a lot of fun for a lot of us. So your chance to see him this Thursday from 4 to 6 p.m. at the UGA bookstore, that's going to be a really good thing. All right, let's do this. We have about, 10 minutes worth of comments we're going to roll through. We're going to get ready to get out of here today. Let's see what else is going on. Jeremy Harbin says actually a team record with 6 passing touchdowns set today. Yeah, with Beck and Bennett combining. Good point there. Patrick Nicholson said South Carolina celebrated so hard after that win. Yeah, but you got a first-year coach. I know what you're saying. You don't want to see an SEC team celebrating at Dowdy-Ficklin Stadium, Rowdy Dowdy as they call it. You don't want to see them celebrating on the road at East Carolina. I think win's going to be pretty hard to come by for the Gamecocks, so I ain't mad at them for celebrating there. Scott Green says 13-0 Hogs. Y'all, Fayetteville is a sneaky good SEC town. If you ever get a chance to go to Fayetteville, it's actually a really pretty cool place. And Reynolds Razorback Stadium is a wonderful ballpark. I got to tell you, that'd be a pretty fun place to be right now. That would be a pretty fun place to be. Jason Crosby says Bennett's a very good, competent quarterback for this season, but Beck needs more playing time. Y'all forget he was a Bama commit at one point in time. Totally fine with giving him more playing time, but Georgia was not playing for 2022 today. I mean, imagine this for a moment. Because when everybody thinks about playing the young quarterback, the vision you have in your mind is that everything goes well. Well, what if it didn't go well? What if Carson Beck played the entire game, and let's say he struggled? I'm not saying he would have, but let's just say, for the sake of conversation, he did. After the game, Kirby Smart asked the same question in reverse. Question he got asked today was, why didn't you start Stetson Bennett over Carson Beck? Let's say that Beck had played the entire game and had struggled in doing so. And Kirby Smart was asked, hey, you had Stetson Bennett, he started some games for you last year. Why didn't you start Carson Beck in this game when you had Bennett on the sideline? And what if Kirby Smart had looked into the press conference camera and had said out loud what some of y'all are saying and what the commenter right there just said? What if he had said, well, we could have started Bennett. He's a safe, easy choice, but we had to find out what we had for 2022. We were kind of playing for 2022 today. What if he just said that out loud? Smart would never say that, but what if he just did? Do you know how he would be raked over the coals, eviscerated for doing that? You can't be thinking about the future. You got to be thinking about right now. And the people that would have eviscerated him in that particular set of circumstances would have been correct to do so. Y'all, Smart made the right choice today, and not just because Stetson Bennett played like Eric Zier. I mean, he made the right choice today because I think, based on all the evidence I have at my disposal, he played the better of his two quarterbacks and still found time to get some of that experience for Carson Beck. But the notion that Beck is entitled to, I mean, imagine if some young Georgia player, I don't believe they ever would, imagine if some young Georgia player said, hey, man, I've been on this campus for more than a year now. I ought to be playing every single snap. Imagine saying that to Latavius Brini, saying that to Amir Speed, saying that to Devontae Wyatt, saying that to guys that really waited their turn to get on the football field. They waited for their opportunity. They didn't expect anything to come to them quick, and I don't think they're going to tolerate any other player who, in his own case, expects something to come to him quick. And to Beck's credit, I don't think he'd ever say that, and I don't think anybody in Beck's camp would ever say that. What unfolded for Georgia today and the build-up to this, it truly was not a crisis. Had you not had a quarterback that could have played as well as Bennett played in the absence of J.T. Daniels, that would have been a crisis. If the Daniels injury were to linger, if some new injury were to occur, and all of a sudden you don't have Daniels for the biggest games you're expected to play this year, now we can talk about an on-field crisis. But the way this has played out over the last couple of days, this is just the way college football is. Young players waiting for their turn, nobody playing as much as they want, but nobody entitled to anything. This is not a stadium giveaway. This is not a magnetic schedule. You don't get free playing time just for walking through the turnstile. Let's get a couple more. Michael Porter says, I'm happy too. Yes, sir. Go Dogs. I love you all the way around on that. Foster Moss kind of evaluating what Beck did today. And listen, I don't think it was, obviously a perfect day for Carson Beck. I'm not going to beat him up over it because he's brand new. But I do think that you see some of those brand new growing pains of, hey, better to have that happen when you're up 31-0 or whatever Georgia was than 0-0. Trust me, a shaky throw in a 0-0 game just feels different. It has an entirely different feel to it. And had Beck played for 60 minutes, I'm sure he would have made plenty of good throws. But he's not behind schedule. He's not behind schedule, not in the least. John Benton says, guys like Devontae Wyatt and Jordan Davis are great examples of what coming back for your senior year can do. And obviously, some guys in Georgia's past maybe could have benefited from that too. I think it's true. Kevin Wood said you got to earn your spot. And it takes time, right? It takes time. And, I mean, listen, a lot of people remember, the Justin Fields situation. That's a totally different situation. He was probably pretty impatient. He left, immediately had success somewhere else. Going to eventually be the starting quarterback of the Chicago Bears. You can say what you want about that situation. I'm not going to really get any deeper than that right now, other than to say that that's not a typical way this kind of stuff plays out. It was atypical to have a quarterback situation in 2018, the likes of which Georgia had. There is nothing about 2021 that in any way feels like 2018 or 2017 or really anything like that. This is just a different thing all the way around. Curtis Witt said, leave Beck alone. JT threw an interception last week. I don't think anybody's being too hard on Beck. What we're saying is, at times, a young quarterback looks like a young quarterback. And Daniels threw an interception last week. It wasn't a good play either. No one's perfect out here. But I think what you really have, though, is some degree an unreasonable expectation for how a quarterback that's never really played an extended game action before was going to do had he got a chance to come out there and start today. Philip Hudson said, okay, Stetson Bennett was lights out at UAB. Let's move on to SEC play. And, yeah, Philip, I think in the case of that, I don't think anyone's going to tell you that's got to be your guy. I guess I did see some frustration with the TV broadcast that RG3 was talking him up a little bit. The one thing you're not going to hear on this show is maybe Georgia should start Stetson Bennett. I'm not. You're not going to hear me say that. That's not what I'm going to say. I was very entertained by what Stetson did today, but I'm not going to sell this as more than it was. Honestly, it's just a pretty good show today, and it's kind of cool that you got a quarterback. I mean, in a roundabout way, and this is the question I'd love to have the answer to. Stetson Bennett didn't get any number one reps at practice before he stepped in Arkansas last year, and as some of you pointed out, it's not obvious they got any number one reps going into the UAB game today. How is this guy so good if he never practices? That's what's amazing to me. What do they just keep this guy in like a glass case and they break it in case of emergency? He just jumps out there and starts spreading the ball all over the yard. How do you throw 5 touchdowns in a game that we were led to believe that he wasn't doing number one reps at practice? That's actually semi-amazing. And, yes, in games later on this season, I want to see JT Daniels back starting. I'd like to see Daniels starting next week against South Carolina, if at all possible. But for now, today was pretty fun. I had a good time. Live here at the UGA bookstore. A few more comments. We're going to get ready to go after that. Sherry checking in to say that Jeff Sintel did say that UAB would be the hardest game in the month of September outside of Clemson. I have good reason to believe that Georgia had a lot of respect for UAB beyond the coach speak stuff. Because here's the honest truth. A lot of you know this. A lot of coach speak when they say, I have got great respect for my opponent. Sometimes they really don't. Sometimes they don't. There are times during the season when a coaching staff shows up for game week knowing that it's going to be easy, either because they have some sort of scheme that the other team can't defend or they just have better players. What coaches say in press conferences oftentimes isn't true. I do have reason to believe, though, that what Georgia was saying about UAB coming into this week was true. They did have respect for UAB as a defense. They did not want to give that team on the road a chance to feel like they were in this game. They wanted to strike hard early. They wanted to extend a lead early and not goof around. They did not want, after an emotional game a week ago, they did not want to find themselves having to dig down and reach for something here today. They wanted to put the game on ice from the beginning, and that's what they did. Kevin Wood said Bennett just studies the game. He could be a great coach one day. He very well might be. Toy Osborne asking about Darnell Washington. I don't know. I mean, I guess both Darnell and Tyke Smith were seen today without walking boots. That's maybe a good sign, but it may still be a little early on that. Alan McGovern says that I'm acting like Beck just came to the program. He was an early enrollee, albeit he's a redshirt freshman, so he's young, and he's had time to develop if he doesn't transfer. So, Alan, here's the thing you got to remember. Yes, he was an early enrollee, but that early enrollee, he might as well have been at Disney World. There was no spring practice. There was very little value in being an early enrollee in a year in which there was no spring practice. Plus, for a redshirt freshman who is only at the beginning of his redshirt freshman year, he is still young. I mean, this is what young is. This is a pup in comparison to most of the guys who are playing quarterback at the SEC level. He is not behind schedule. Now, does the loser of the 2022 quarterback competition transfer? Very good chance that he does. Could that be Beck? Could it be Vandergriff? Yes. I mean, will Gunnar Stockton eventually decide he wants to go somewhere else if one of these guys becomes the next, great thing? Very much likely so. But today's game is not transfer portal drama. That's not the story here. The story is Georgia made the best of a bad situation. They wanted to start their starting quarterback in the second game of the season. They couldn't have. And lo and behold, the guy they did start set a record or tied a record. That's just kind of a cool thing. And the Beck part of this of why didn't they give a redshirt freshman a chance to play the entire game, I'm just not there. I'm not there. John Benton also mentioning some late passes. I mean, that's the thing, too. It's like, if Justin Fields was watching this game, the fact that Beck got to come in with the lead to where it was and the fact that he was getting a chance to throw, Justin Fields like, why couldn't I do that in 2018? Think about the South Carolina game where, finally Fields gets a chance to come in and play. They're beating South Carolina by 100 points on the road, and Fields turned around handing it off every single play. So, I mean, they could have done that today, and they didn't do it, and I would have been frustrated had they done so. But They've done it in the past. They did that South Carolina last year. So they at least let him throw. A couple more comments. We're going to get ready to get out the door here today. Good show all the way around. Good time all the way around. All right, back on YouTube just for a second. Cindy OG said he called Kentucky over Missouri. That's a big win if it holds up. Let's see what else. Scott Green said today's Dogs look like the best team in the country. I like that line of thought for sure. Alex Waller says nobody's clamoring for Bennett to replace Daniels at least. Yeah, I mean, that's the case. Like, Georgia has an obvious starting quarterback. But look, to have a guy who has won SEC games as your backup quarterback, I mean, do this in your mind. A lot of y'all are pretty big college football fans. Now, you know the backup quarterback at Florida because he's about to overtake the starter. Who's the backup quarterback at Auburn? Who's the backup quarterback at Arkansas? Who's the backup quarterback at Ole Miss? Who's the backup quarterback? You probably know the LSU backup quarterback. That's Nussmeier, the 4-star. You found out the A&M backup quarterback, but that's – would you rather have Jake Calzada backing up JT Daniels or a guy like Stetson Bennett? I think I'd rather have Bennett. I mean, like there's not a lot of backup quarterbacks in the SEC who have a significant amount of game experience, and that's what Georgia can say it has. And that's not nothing. Backup quarterback in the SEC is not a developmental position. All right, we're getting ready to go. Oh, Scott Green says Hogs up 16-0. That is fantastic. Yo, I love Sam Pittman. I'd love to see him giving you a big yes, sir, after that game is done. All right, let's get ready to go. So good stuff all the way around. Let me remind you again, anything else on Facebook before we go? All right, so Isaac Cruz says Missouri just scored 14-6. I'm assuming PAT pending there. All right, we're getting ready to go. Somebody's, all right, let's do James Marable here, and we'll finish with this. It'll be our last comment. He says, my problem is Kirby named Beck as our number 2 and then went another way. Not a good look. I understand that. And I realize that there's just – I think there is room for disagreement on this because a lot of people are expressing the same comment that James said. I understand where you're coming from. But for me, there's a very big difference between a number 2 quarterback when your starter is a healthy guy who you hope is a Heisman contender and a guy who actually has to start the game in the event that your starter's injured and unable to do that. I just think it's just a different kind of thing all the way around. And once the decision became not who do you want to have in the backup role working with the number 2 offense during practice, but who do you want to put out there with the other starters playing your best football from the first quarter on Saturday, I just think it's a different decision. Some of us are going to disagree on that. I'm happy to have the discussion, but I feel pretty strongly that it's not the same thing. But we'll obviously have to leave it there for today. Hit me up on Twitter if you want to keep talking about it, at Dog Nation Daily. I'll see you Monday for Dog Nation Daily as well, back in our Dog Nation World Headquarters studios. Thursday's a big day here at the UGA bookstore. Mark Rick signing his book from 4 to 6 p.m. That's going to be fun stuff. We'll be back here again next week there as well for a fun edition of our post-game show. Big thanks to the UGA bookstore. Beautiful shirt that I'm wearing today. This came from the UGA bookstore. Listen, if the clothes make me look good, then you know they're good-looking clothes because it ain't easy to make me look good. So I'm very thankful for all of that. Thankful to have all of you with us here, too. We'll see you again next week and Monday for Dog Nation Daily. Go to dognation.com. Read all the other content, everything that Kirby Smart had to say, everything that's going on in the aftermath of the win against UAB. You can find it all there. We'll see you next time right here at the Dog Nation postgame show presented by the UGA Bookstore.